Welcome to D's Practice Pod. This is a show about drums, drumming, and drummers. Today's guest is Mr. Joe Franco. Among others, he's been the drummer for such bands as Good Rats, Chilliwack, Fiona, Twisted Sister, and Widowmaker. He's recorded and toured with guitarist Leslie West, Vinnie Moore, Doro, Jack Bruce of Cream. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. He's a published author, writing the book Double Bass Drumming, which I both learned in and teach out of. He's recorded with the likes of Mariah Carey, Celine Dion, Taylor Dane, Diana Ross, and Hall & Oates. He's the music and audio post-producer at his studio in New York City, Beat Street. And let's welcome him now. Hello, Mr. Franco. How are you, sir?
I'm really good, D. Thanks for the invite.
You know what? I've been trying to get you for a little while. I have a dream here. I saw a clinic. I'm dating the both of us right now. I saw a clinic years ago, somewhere in Queens, in the banquet hall of a fire station. It was you, Frank Bellucci, and Rod Morgenstein.
Oh yeah, I actually have that on video.
You do?
Yeah, not the whole thing, but my segment. I think I had a video recorder and I gave it to my drum tech, and he just went around and videoed a bunch of things. I'll put it up on my YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I'll put it up one of these days.
I would love to see that.
Vinnie Moore played with me.
It was a great show, and the first time I ever saw a drop clutch, because that was one of the first questions you were asked. What's that thing on your hi-hat? Oh yeah, it's a drop clutch, something DW just came up with.
Oh right.
You know?
DW was the first? I didn't realize that.
I'm pretty sure they were. I'd never seen one before. And that's one of, we drummers are, inventors, and we're always trying to make the better mousetrap and reinvent the wheel. The number of times I've seen people try to redesign that thing to make it better, and all it did was make it more expensive, and it's failed. It's such an elegant little thing that does exactly what it should do, exactly when it should. It never fails.
That's not true. Oh. If you hit too hard, it re-engages. You know what I'm saying? You ever have that? Well, sometimes I hit too hard, like often, and it re-engages, and it's like, oh, and then you're like playing with. Yeah,
this is true. I think it happens less frequently though. If you get the ones that have the lever going this way rather than this way.
Yeah.
The pearl ones that I use now, they're the distance between the spool at the top where it grabs onto the hook is adjustable, so that you can have a little bit of play if you need it, and that probably would come in handy if you're a really heavy-handed, But what a great invention! What will we do with that thing? It's amazing. It's amazing. So let's get right into some of these things here. Get my question sheet out here. There'll be a slight degree of edit involved in this. Let's see. So, tell me how did you get started? What age were you when you started playing drums?
I think around 12. It was I had drums around the house. My uncle played in a club date band. He had a set of WFLs and 3-piece actually at the time, just snare, rack, and kick drum. And I was kind of like into watching them practice, because you always practice at the drummer's house.
Right.
And then the Beatles came out. And at that point, my uncle had gotten married, and the drums just were set up in the basement and no one touched them, And the Beatles and Ed Sullivan, it was just like, oh my God, overnight. It went from baseball to music, because the Beatles.
It goes in the opposite direction. It goes from music to someone picks up a football or something, and then it
Yeah.
comes back when they're on the crutches.
Well, I'm still into baseball big time. In fact, the Yankees are on at 7:05. I think we'll just about make it.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was like a cool thing because until the Beatles, it was always the singer and the background band,
right.
And when the Beatles arrived, it was like Johnny down the block plays guitar and Billy around the corner plays bass, and hey, let's get together at the drummer's house and see what we can do, and at that time it was Beatles, but Ventures and surf music, and then the rest of the Brit Invasion. And so yeah, that got me going at an early age, 12, 13. That's when I started.
And I guess that's really where you got the bug too. After you got the bug, you usually seek out some education. Uh, who did you choose to learn from?
Well, I had an uncle who was a drummer, as I told you, and he was like, "Wow, you're really getting into this." He taught me my first two beats. He taught me this one and this one.
You go pretty far with those two.
You can do everything with those two beats. Now this is you talk about dating yourself. That was the twist beat and the jazz beat.
Right.
And so, with something rock, you played the twist beat, and the fills were all 16ths, and if something swung, you played the jazz beat, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So I was able to basically get through my Beatle records with those two beats, and that's basically how I learned, because he did take me for some lessons, and the drum teacher I had was, you know, uh, he was showing me some stuff. I never touched the drum. I was just on the pad, which is all good. But it wasn't. I got to turn my ringer off. Um, it wasn't inspiring.
Right.
The Beatles inspired me. My drum lessons. So I went many years just as a self-taught, play with my records kind of drummer. Played in bands, the whole deal, and just kind of like self-taught and doing okay. Learning from my heroes, going to the Fillmore East and seeing Hendrix, seeing Cream, seeing all that stuff, because that was the next British invasion. The first British invasion was Beatles and Stones and Dave Clark Five and all that stuff, and that was all amazing, But then, like 66, 67, then it was like the second invasion, and that was all about Cream and Hendrix, and that was my high school days. Cream and Hendrix, that was like religion, and that just kicked my butt. That was still to this day some of my biggest influences. Ginger, Mitch, the drummers from that era, Keith Moon. Yeah.
Did you see that there was a documentary on Ginger Baker on?
Of course.
Yeah.
Beware, Mr. Baker.
Yes.
I actually went to a theater to see it in Manhattan. It was this like little theater. And me and two of my buddies went, and we were half the crowd. I mean, it was a very small theater, but there was less than 10 people.
Yeah, well, you know what? Some of the really coolest stuff, the stuff with the most value, it doesn't appeal to the masses. Just don't. It's not their thing. They don't get it. I went and saw Dweezil Zappa once at the Westbury Music Fair, and I on a lark found out that he was even playing there like a couple of days beforehand. I got tickets. I was one row off the stage. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga had to add like 3 shows to Madison Square Garden because she kept on selling them out. And I'm sure her show was just fine, but the musicianship was not going to be what the show that I saw was. And it wasn't even, he did get a lot of adulation when he got there, but it was not full. It's rarefied air. You know.
Yep.
So who are some of your, well, I know some of your musical influences. How about your drumming heroes? You say Mr. Baker. Um,
Yeah, well, he was a biggie, and I guess what followed, and who was very important to me, was Carmine, in that he was really my first teacher who I really looked up to, and he really kicked my ass and really made me want to be a drummer. Um, I was a big Cactus fan at the time. Of course, we all knew the Fudge, but and when the Fudge played Ed Sullivan, it was almost like the Beatles in a way. It was like what Carmine did was like all the drummers up to them, including Dino, who I loved.
yeah,
Carmine was Dino on steroids. I mean, he was, so I'm a teenage kid, and um, I see drum clinic, and back then, I know some of the jazzers were doing drum clinics, but this is the first time a rock drummer did a drum clinic.
right,
Sam Ash Hempstead, it's got to be 71 or two, early 70s. And Carmine's doing the clinic at the basement of this Lutheran church. So I went to that. I sat like really close, and it was the first time I saw a drummer that powerful up close,
right.
and that really made an impression on me. What made even more of an impression on me, and why to this day we're dear friends, is I says, "Wow, like I really dig what you do. Do you give drum lessons?" And he goes, "Sure," and he gives me his number. And I was like, "Whoa," So I used to go to his house in Oceanside, and at the time he was writing a book, and he would just give me little segments of the book to work on. And of course, the book was realistic rock. So that inspired me on a lot of different levels. On one level, it was like, this guy's really cool and plays so well, and he's such a nice guy. And he was a real, he wasn't a teacher like Stick Heights and that kind of a teacher, but he took me through all of the important stuff. We did syncopation and stick control and the Chapin book, and the classics. So but what's also inspired me is like, wow, he's writing a book. He's into the educational thing as well, which for rock drummers was rare back then. You wouldn't see Ginger Baker or Mitch Mitchell doing a drum clinic. So like on many levels, that was a big inspiration to me, and not only myself. I mean, if you talk to Ian Pace or the late John Bonham, they would all say, Carmine was a big influence. Um, and I could blab forever, okay? Because after Carmine, the next level of wow was Tony Williams, and I didn't get into Tony Williams because he played with Miles Davis. I got into Tony Williams because after the Cream broke up, you followed all three of them, and where did Jack Bruce go? He's playing with this guy Tony Williams. Well, I need to investigate this and see what's going on here. And I put on that record, and that 6/8 thing that starts the record, or it starts one of the side. I was so blown away by that groove that to this day, practically, it inspires my drum solos. My drum solos, say, with Good Rats was in 6/8. It all came from that Tony album, And from Tony, went to Mahavishnu and the whole fusion movement, and Billy, of course, Alphonse, Lenny White. I mean, all of those guys. That was my 70s. I didn't really, I kind of was like a rock snob for a while. I mean, even though I was playing in rock bands, I just thought this music was from like another planet, and I really got seriously into that whole genre.
I think drummers in general, I think we 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 might pick our lane that we play in, but musically, we're interested in a lot of things.
Oh, you got to be.
We're always interested in what that next influence is going to be. And I can't speak for other instruments, but I know that I found that with drummers, your well, I'm dating myself again, your CD collection, it would be like a normal person's like 10 people's CD collections, just because I personally listen to everything from like Anita Baker to ZZ Top. So, you know,
As you should.
as you should. Um, you've actually had varied musical genres to deal with in your career. Do you have a most or least favorite? Like, you know, it, you're a journeyman. You've done a lot of stuff, so you've played with a lot of different types of people. Um, what do you dig, and what is kind of a job?
Well, for my career, I I liked a lot of the stuff I did in the '80s with guitar players like Vinnie Moore, Blue Saraceno, Leslie West. I really I feel that I just get along really well with guitar players, and I'm lucky enough to play with a bunch of really good ones. And I like that era. I love what I did with D after Twisted Sister, and that was a couple of records with a band called Widowmaker.
Yeah,
And I thought that band was really, really strong because Al's just a killer guitarist, Mark is a killer bass player, and D is the best frontman. I mean, how do you get better than that? So I really loved that era of my music career. Unfortunately, by the early '90s, you know what happened. The Seattle thing was what was
over everything.
cool, and the hair bands, which we got clumped into, were not cool. So that happened. But yeah, if you that was to me the cool part of my career. Playing with Leslie West and Jack Bruce. I mean, that stuff just like the best moments of my career. I mean, yeah, I played with a lot of divas and had number one singles and gold platinum albums and all that stuff. But that was a whole nother story. That was when programming got really big in the mid '80s. And I first was the first guy to say, give me my sticks. This is bullshit. And to this day, I'm not a fan of the Lindrum but then came along this other thing, sampling, and you can give these machines a personality, and then you can actually play them into a computer, and it can actually feel like something. Well, I started getting involved, and but I don't really think I was a great programmer because I always programmed like I would play, like I programmed like a drummer, and I remember. Diane Warren had told the producer of some of the Taylor Dane stuff I played on, like, that's not a drummer. And so that to me was cool, that to take the drummer smarts and make a hi-hat that would crossfade into your different nuances of playing a hi-hat and play it into a computer and have it feel good. So I like that challenge, and I dove into it because it was really new. But uh, that lasted maybe 4 or 5 years, and once I put a studio together and had my drums, I got rid of all my drum machines and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, ain't nothing like the real thing.
I, I tried it out for a little while. I bought a Roland 626.
Uh-huh.
It's because I didn't have the money for an 808. But yeah, and it was really clunky. I'll tell you one thing that it did help me do, though. It uh, helped me put together a good samba beat, because it was one of those things where it's all so completely four-way independence that I could get what I had and then just program the rest in there, and then I would play along to it once I could catch up. It was a lot like having a buddy in the room that was able to pinch hit for you. And so it was good for that, but you know
Yeah,
and
I think it's great to play along with loops and machines. I find when I do that, I practice longer.
yeah,
It's just inspiring. You feel like you're playing with someone, or even practicing with a click for that matter. It just I don't know, it just kind of, you just do things, and it does improve your groove and all that, but it's just fun. It's just a fun thing. I mean, I turn on the click every day when I get behind my pad, and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I would rather have something playing in the background rather than just the click, because
yeah,
because the click to me is it's a little monotonous, you know.
yeah.
Plus,
Well, I'm actually working on technical things.
oh, I
Like,
know you.
so for me, the click is my monitor as to where I'm going with things.
Right, right, right. Let's see. What's more about Beat Street?
Well, Beat Street happened out of necessity. I had a drum studio, and I've lived in Manhattan since 1990. And I had a drum studio I shared with Jonathan Mover, because, here I am in the city. Where do I put my drums, right? So, and then I had my writing studio, my composing MIDI studio, programming studio, whatever you want to call it, my gear, my electronic gear in my loft in Manhattan, right down the block from where my drum studio was on 22nd Street. So, 93 maybe, yeah, I meet my wife, and all of a sudden we're married and expecting our first child, and the section of the loft that was devoted to my studio became a baby's room. So, out of necessity, I needed a space to work, and I just walked down to 22nd and Broadway, found a space in 95, which I'm still, that's Beach Street. I found a space. I moved my drums out of Smash, which I was sharing with Jonathan, and married my drums to my gear. And we were actually able to play on records for people in the comfort of my own studio. Yeah, so that's how Beach Street started. It started out of needing a home for my gear. Um, Years after that, maybe 2 years after that, I was approached by people I was doing some work for, the Sesame Street people. And I used to do programming for them because they had a Sesame Street band, but then in the off season they would do like these direct to VHS projects. Big Bird Gets Lost,
What
that kind
was it? PBS like directly or their production company?
of. I'm sorry, PBS.
Yeah, PBS, Public Broadcasting.
Yeah, no, this was called, it started as the Sesame Children's Workshop, and now it's called Sesame Workshop. So Sesame Workshop, they do Sesame Street, but they also do a gazillion other things under the Sesame Workshop banner. Anyway, so one of these things they were doing, I get a call from a dear friend of mine, Paul Jacobs. He said, "Oh, I got to do this thing for Sesame Street, and it's called The Sea Drives Me Crazy. And can you make that funny sounding snare drum?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, sure, come on over." And so he dragged me into a bunch of different projects, one with Marlo Thomas, and I met this great cat who's still a dear friend of mine, Chris Surf. And he and Paul were putting a new show together, and it's called Between the Lions. Now, they wanted to put together a real band, kind of like Sesame Street did for Sesame Street, and have a house band, and they wanted me to play drums. So I said, "Yeah, great." I said, "But you might want to come and check my studio out because you might want to record me here. I'm all mic'd up, ready to go." They come down to Beach Street, and they were like, "Wow, we could do the whole show here." And this is the late 90s, and that's still what I do every day.
Wow.
That show Between the Lions lasted for 10 years, and it snowballed into like today we're doing like all these different children's television programs. Like we do Blues Clues, which you probably heard of. We're doing a new show with Ludacris. I won't say the title because it's not out yet, but it's coming out, I think, late this year or early next year. And it's killer. It's a very musical show. Takes place in Brooklyn. It's very urban. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a hit show. Anyway, I love what I do because basically we're teaching. I'm not drum teaching now, but I feel like I'm teaching kids every day with the programming we do because it's all educationally based. It's all like teaching kids to read, teaching kids about the different emotions, about it's a feel good thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to segue into teaching now. Firstly, I'll double back a little bit into double bass drumming, your book. It's a book that I teach out of. I've been teaching. I've been playing for 43 years. I've been teaching for 24. Always pull this book out when it comes to the double bass. That's what I learned in first. That's what my teacher of many years was Al Miller. And there's a connection there. It was his typewriter that typed the book out. It's a great book. It's a very, very comprehensive way to start playing double bass. What inspired you to teach that book? Was it Carmine?
No, Carmine got me into playing double bass the way most of the rock drummers were playing double bass at the time. All the early players, Baker included, they basically were single bass players and they added the second bass drum. And what a lot of them did was what you would do on your hi hat, play eighth notes, or quarters in the shuffle, basically taking their left foot, their hi hat left foot, and putting it on the second bass drum.
Right.
And because of that, and that's how I learned how to play. So, but I realized um, all I was really playing was a single stroke roll where my left foot was just playing eighth notes and I was playing the E's and U's on my right foot, or a really fast shuffle, like, a la quadrant four, a Carmine's Parchment Farm, dooga 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 dooga, that kind of thing. And so um, what got me into writing a book was I had developed the name and in the Northeast with Good Rats, of course, and the people at the drum center had a publishing company called DC Publications,
Yep.
and they were trying to get all the local teachers into writing books for their company, and Lester Merle and oh man, I'm spacing now, Frank Marino. I'm trying to think of, but yeah, I was one of those guys. And so Jerry and Dom at the time, they said, you should write a book on double bass. So I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'll do that. And so I start doing my shuffle and my single stroke roll with all my different diddle inversions on top of that. And I said, okay, here's my book. And the publishers were like, oh yeah, that's great. And there was something that really bugged me about it because I thought it was not very musical. I thought it wasn't really saying much. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and I started, I'd expressed my frustration with this whole left foot lead thing to a lot of players. Like I'd see Terry Bozzio at a PAS show or a NAM show, and I said, Terry, so I saw you leading with your left foot playing double bass, but then you end up the phrase on your left foot. And he goes, yeah. He goes, no, I just play a double right at the end, that kind of thing. And then something bugged me about that, and because if you wanted to play a boom boom ba, and you wanted to embellish and go dooga dooga da dooga doo, you want to play that right foot on the eighth notes. Anyway, so long story short, I turned my whole way of playing around, and in doing that, I went with like what I just described, like two eighth notes to 4/16 notes, and built grooves based on a single stroke roll with a right foot lead. And I created rhythms by taking notes out of that roll. And
Right.
if you notice in my book, there are pages that are really heavy left foot. There are pages that are very straight
Yeah.
quarter note or eighth note, and then just a little left foot. Yeah, and what was really cool about that, and of course, who's to say play left, left, right, or right, right? Who's to say? This to me was very organized, and I always came out on the one on my main bass drum when I wanted to crash, and it just seemed like a cool way of playing. It took me about a year to get acclimated to playing like right foot lead, but when I got into it, if I thought of a rhythm in my head, I then didn't have to figure out how it was going to come out. It was always like, I can play Walk This Way, and I know it's going to be,
Right.
right, left, left, right, left, right, right, that kind of thing. That's one of the rhythms in the book, actually. And no credit to Aerosmith. I'm sorry, guys. It was only a drum lick. But yeah, that made me feel really good about what I was doing because I was basically so glued to this left foot lead thing. I would play my double bass triplets left, right, right, and it
Almost
just
counterintuitive to having the double bass at that point. Yeah,
exactly.
it's using one foot as an accessory.
And what I found about that whole system of playing is that the kids of the generation when I was teaching, because I started teaching in 82, 83, because I wanted to write this book and I wanted to explore this new thing I was developing for
Right.
my own playing.
Sure.
And I would get these kids, these 15-year-old kids, like a John Macaluso, who he's a fantastic drummer, who weren't old school like me, learning to play time on their left foot. They were just like, oh yeah, I got a double pedal, or my first drum set was a double bass drum set. If you're righty, you're going to lead with your right foot. So it actually made more sense to people starting out than the people who were old school players. When I say old school, I mean all of those guys led with their left foot. Ainsley Dunbar, all of the guys from the '60s and '70s. Anyway, I can blab on forever about this stuff, but that was kind of how the evolution of double bass drumming, you know, um,
Right.
it's how it evolved. And so I was happy with that. And I hear like players like today playing a lot more broken rhythms with their kicks rather than that same old dugga dugga dugga.
Right.
And that makes me happy. I'm really happy to see that because I think it's more musical.
I think a lot of that also might have something to do with the fact that a lot of drummers might have even shifted the focus away from just playing with the rhythm guitarist and the bass player to trying to replicate some of the things that the lead guitarist is playing with their feet, you know? And
Yeah.
it's just another way of doing it, you know? But
Yeah, I got to explore that stuff with some of the guitar players I played with, like Vinnie Moore and Blue Saraceno, those guys. Um, but today, what the metal bands are playing, like, oh my God! I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Brooks Wackerman and what he's doing with Avenged Sevenfold, and what's that band I've been listening to? Gohira. Um,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, Mario, him and his brother, his brother plays guitar, and they have this band, French rock group. These guys are incredible. They're doing really musical stuff, but the stuff they're playing on the double kicks are just like, I mean,
you could go into the like the blast beat end of things too with guys like Derek Roddy.
I love him, man. He plays some sick stuff.
That's crazy, you know?
Yeah, I'm like amateur hour. I'll be the first to admit.
I think in those bands, absolutely the uh, the keystone player is the drummer in those bands, and they're really forging new ground, in what it is they're doing. Um,
some bands are more musical than others. I just, not to sound snobbish, but like, I can't listen to a lot of that stuff. But there are a lot of people exploring that new terrain and doing really cool stuff with it.
Well, to quote Bill Burr, the Cookie Monster lyrics. Oh,
Yeah.
I can do without. Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe I'm 52. It's not my generation.
You're a youngster.
Well, yeah, people keep telling me that. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the current state of music education?
Well, what is the current state? In COVID era, it's Skype lessons and YouTube.
I
Um,
myself.
Look, I mean, look, back in the day, you wanted to see a drummer who you idolized. I mean, you get to see him twice a year. I go see Clive Bunker twice a year playing Jethro Tull, when they came to the Fillmore, that kind of thing. And I live for that because these drummers who were my heroes. I just wanted to just stare at them for that hour, hour and a half, and soak in as much as I can. To be able to go on YouTube now and listen to every drummer who ever lived,
Yeah,
uh, is amazing. I think it's amazing. I can't say, I was all better in the old days. It wasn't. It's really cool. Um, I don't think the lessons online are as effective as when somebody sits next to you and say, "Oh, turn that hand a little," and but I do feel that the technology and the internet and all that's out there today is just amazing.
they're
Yeah.
great new tools. I think we pretty much everyone I've had on now recently, we've been talking about technology and the computer and how it's affecting a lot of things in life, including music education. I can say that uh, maybe what it is that we do on our kits is now evolving at an exponential rate because it used to be that playing was more regional. You know, They- there was a Seattle sound. There
Yeah.
was a Baltimore sound. Now you can hear these things in your living room whenever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. When I grew up, it was the Long Island Sound, okay, and there was the Vagrants, the Rascals, and the Fudge, and those three bands, they pretty much had defined that era in our region, in the Northeast.
Yeah, yeah. You've worked with quite a few people from Long Island, including some of the divas we spoke of. I mean, look, Mariah, she's a Long Islander.
Oh,
Taylor,
yeah.
she's from Long Island.
Taylor Dane's from Long Island, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I think Merrick or Belmore or something. Yeah.
yeah. It's pretty. Well, this has always been a hotbed of um, talent.
And the drummers, oh my God,
Yeah,
from the generation that inspired me, for sure, like, the Al Miller and Charlie Perry and Jim Chapin, um, yeah, one of the really sweet things that the drum center used to do every year, Jerry was the ringleader, and he'd have a dinner with all Long Island drum teachers, and Dom was there, and myself, and always Chapin and Al Miller, Charlie Perry, and we'd go to the Bonwit Inn in Comac on Comac Road. Is that still there?
I'm not sure. I don't get out there that.
And it was once I maybe did it 3 or 4 times maybe. Those were great moments, and you realize how many drummers come from just those three teachers. I mean, Charlie Perry, Mike Riccadella, who was with the Illusion and Barnaby Bye, one of the really great drummers of that era, and still. And you think about all the great drummers and the Frank Belushi's. I mean, come on, who's better than that?
Such a nice guy.
Oh, Frank is his work ethic, his everything about him, man. He just makes everything look so effortless, and what a funny cat.
Backwards. It was funny when I saw you play at that uh, the clinic in Queens. Two of the drummers were left-handed.
I know, I was the odd guy out.
When does that happen? Never.
Meanwhile, Frank opened that clinic, and me and Rod were like backstage saying, "Holy shit, how are we going to follow that?"
All three of you guys were just amazing, and all three of you were just so different, which is, that's one of the best bangs for your buck in entertainment if you're a musician is to go to a drum clinic, because
Yeah.
you get to see the most amazing world-class guys, and you get to ask them questions. You get to pick their brain. When can you do that? And what do they cost? I don't know of any of them that have ever been more than maybe $20. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, drummers are a really cool breed, and really so happy to share all their information and all their technique, and I love that about drummers. And to this day, I mean, you can go on YouTube and someone's like telling you about how they do something. It's like, wow, that was an amazing drum lesson. That didn't cost me a dime. Yeah.
So I guess you still play some. I see a whole lot of drums back there.
Yeah, well, I have a lot in storage. I've got the snare room next door. I've got, there's way too many. I started donating kits. I gave my big purple Widowmaker kit to the Modern Drummer Museum down in Lauderdale. And I'm down to like just my main kit, this DW kit that is just awesome, really awesome kit. Every drum sounds like it came from the same tree, and probably did.
You've been a DW guy for a long time.
Yeah, I've been with no, well, DW since 93, maybe 92, 93. Yeah.
I hate to tell you, 92, 93 was a long time ago.
Well,
It
I
took
was,
8 years.
I was with Premiere for 25 years before that, from 77 to 92, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And then I always, every day, start my day walking by not my first drum kit. My first drum kit was a hand-me-down, but this is my first drum kit,
Oh, yeah.
the Ringo. And I call that kit, that's Silent Ringo. The guy in back of me is Darth Vader. Uh, that Garrison, when him and John Good were putting that kit together, they named it Darth Vader because I wanted black rims, black hardware, and black.
That's, when they ask you, you're gonna do what you want to do.
But my Ringo kit, what's interesting about this kit is it's silent. And that's as it's silent Ringo. It's got the silent cymbals and the silent Remo heads. Um, yeah. So the idea there is like, if my wife is watching a movie or something, my wife goes out to play golf for 4 hours. That's how I roll.
We've all been there. I'm married since '93 also, and when I first got married, I had to get a set of Roland TD7s
Yeah.
practice because we got an apartment, and acoustic drums are not conducive to apartment living.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still got complaints because it was a basement apartment, and so technically, with the TD7s, they had that like wedge thing. They actually gave you an angled beater so that the beater would come down this way.
Okay.
And so essentially you're stomping on the floor with the bass drum. So that's concrete. You wouldn't figure that would make a lot of noise, but they were hearing it on the second floor. So I had to put some towels underneath it, keep it quiet.
Funny.
But wow. Yeah, well, you've had I guess you've already answered the question what's next too with the Luda thing. So I'd say is there something that you'd like to do that you have not yet done?
Well, it's pretty hard to say, what I'd like to do that I have not yet done. It's tough, at my stage of the game here. Um, to be quite honest with you, the last thing I want to do is get into a tour bus and tour the world.
Right.
I really enjoy doing things educational. I'm in the process of exploring new ways of just kind of uh, adding to the book, embellishing double bass drumming with modern drummer who just took over the distribution rights. So we're going to come up with some ideas and some ways that I can just kind of embellish what I've done there, and that's exciting to me. Educational things are exciting. I like kind of giving back, helping fellow drummers. And I do have a possible recording band project. Like I said, I'm not looking to get into a tour bus, but I'd love to play once or twice a month, that kind of thing.
That is, yeah.
And well, more to follow on that. Um, and yeah, and I'm working on I'm still practicing. I'm working on stuff. And
Lifelong.
yeah, you never get there. You kind of hit these ceilings and you can't get past them. But then, a month later you're doing something like, wait a minute, I couldn't do that last month. And that's the beauty of playing an instrument.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
So, well, it's probably just about time. Um, you have a dinner date.
I have a dinner date. The Yankees are on 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's wrap it up then. Um, it's been a real joy talking to you. This has been a bit of time coming, and I'm so glad we did it. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you at a later date to come back and talk about more stuff.
Well, thank you, Dee. I had a great time and I love what you're doing. And yeah, continued success.
Thank you very much. Well, enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much for being a guest here. You're a real get, and I've always enjoyed your playing. I've like I say, I teach out of your book. It was one of the other things that inspired me. I have a few books of my own. I have 6 that I self-publish right now. I can send you copies if you'd be interested in taking a look at them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. Well, I love your passion for the instrument, and yeah, I'm always into looking at what people are doing and interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, I'll send them over to you. All right. Okay. Well, this has been Dee's Practice Pod, with our guest Joe Franco, and I had a great time.
Thanks, Dee.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care. Thanks. Bye.